Welcome to CFRI's Cystic Fibrosis Community Voices, a video podcast series created by and for the cystic fibrosis community.
Welcome back, everybody who has been listening to our podcast series about paying for CF care, financial resources for the CF community. So my name is Tiffany Raffino, and I'm a clinical social worker with the University of California, San Francisco, with their pediatric and satellite clinic in their adult hospital. And so in this podcast, we're going to be talking about the whole range of programs that are available to people from a variety of nonprofit foundations. So part one of the podcast series looked at income support. So what do you do if you're going to be taking time off from work to take care of your CF, or you're taking time off work from work to care for a family member? Part two of our podcast series looked at just navigating medical expenses. What do you do to help pay for hospital bills, for medication expenses? So part three, again, we're going to look at what are all the other programs that are out there to help support people. So I want to talk about nonprofit foundations. People are often amazed by just the amount of foundations that are out there. Some of these foundations are started by families where someone has cystic fibrosis, or there might be a foundation that's available for just, children with medical condition, or people who live in Humboldt County, California, just a whole range of programs that are out there to help people. Some of them may be based, again, on the geographic region where you live, like Humboldt, California, or Santa Cruz, or the particular region. So I definitely recommend talking with your specific social worker at your hospital, because they're going to be a better resource to know the specific programs that might be available to you. But I'm going to talk about some of the programs that are available, just to give you an idea of what's out there. And some of the programs I'm going to cover are available for everybody nationwide. I also have the phone number here on the slide for the CF Foundation Compass program. I can't recommend them highly enough. They're a great resource for just looking at all the different programs that are available for people with cystic fibrosis. Okay, so a couple of nonprofit foundations. The Cystic Dreams Fund is really amazing, and they say that they don't have a certain income limit. So if you're a family who is really concerned about your expenses and you have really high hospital bills, even if you think you might not qualify, I would go ahead and send an application and maybe they'll consider it. They're available for both pediatric and adults. They help with things like drug copays, medical bills, transplant-related expenses. So they're a really wonderful resource. Claire's Place Foundation, I love them. I just worked with them last week. They have this incredible extended hospital stay program. So if there is a situation where there's a child who's in the hospital for 14 days and your family, maybe you've tapped into the income programs that I mentioned in the first podcast and you're still really struggling to make ends meet, maybe paying your rent or your bills, they might look at actually paying your rent for you for a month or other emergency expenses. So it's a tremendous foundation, and they're amazing. United Healthcare Children's Foundation will help pay for medical expenses and other miscellaneous expenses. They do have household income criteria that I published here on this slide. So for a family of 3, for example, you could earn $100,000 and still qualify. So it's fairly generous, especially if you're not living in a huge cost of living area. They're a great resource. The First Hand Foundation, I feel like I send applications to them every week. They have a great grant to pay for travel and lodging, another grant that can help pay for medical expenses, like things just that aren't covered by insurance. Maybe it's equipment or different treatments. A lot of other programs for treatment and medications were covered in part 2 of this podcast series, but I do want to mention the First Hand Foundation here because they're an amazing resource that can help with a whole variety of other things. I did publish their household income criteria based on the number of children in the household and the household income. So if you have 2 kids and your household income is less than $55,000, you could qualify for treatment help. Maybe they can help pay for some nebulizers or, a portable party track or something that can really help with your treatment. Their travel and lodging guidelines are also published, so they're a great foundation. So shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about education-related expenses. Maybe you have, a child in your family who's going to be going to college soon. I can't speak highly enough for the amount of scholarships that are out there for people with cystic fibrosis. So I have the CFRI website here because it's the best resource that I found. Thank you, CFRI, for publishing all these scholarships. I would really recommend just getting a calendar out because there are deadlines all throughout the year, and just getting a calendar and marking down when each of these scholarship deadlines are going to happen, and then just making sure you apply for all of them. I know patients who've gotten like 6 scholarships. So don't hesitate to look at it. There are scholarships for 4-year colleges as well as scholarships for 2-year vocational programs. There are a lot of resources that are out there. I just learned that Vertex offers scholarships not just for the person with CF, but for a sibling, for a parent who wants to go back to school. So there are tremendous resources. I also want to mention the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. I'm most familiar with the California Department of Vocational Rehab. I didn't have time to research if this is available in other states, but maybe you could take a look and see if something similar is in your state. So this program, it's designed to help people who have a medical condition that might impact their ability to work, or if they have a disability that's kept them from working, get back into the workforce. So let's say you're getting SSI, and you've been getting it since you were 5 years old and you're about to go to college. You are a priority for them in paying for education-related expenses that can get you into the workforce. So you could apply for them to pay for 4 years of your college for learning business skills that will help you become employed. So it's kind of a long shot sometimes, but let me tell you, when this works out, it's a tremendous source of assistance. I just helped someone who's 18 and this was his first year in college, and the Department of Rehab is paying for 4-year college and all of his books. So it's a tremendous source of assistance if it works out. Another scenario that could come up is, let's say your job training is a chef, and you've been working as a chef, and you are just exhausted from being on your feet all day, and by the time you get home from work, you just can't do your treatments anymore, and you want to think about a different career, and you want to go to work, and you know what, you've always wanted to be a graphic designer. And you can do that working from home and have more flexibility. Or you want to learn how to be a computer programmer. Or maybe there's some other job that you want to do, some kind of marketable skill that you want to go to school to learn this specific trade to help you become employed in a new profession. You could potentially apply for payment or for financial support from the Department of Rehab to learn this new job skill. So it's a tremendous resource that can be extremely helpful for people. Then there's emotional support. I love this slide. It's just kind of funny. There's someone lying down on a couch and it says, "Oh, doctor, can I up the dosage? I still have feelings." There's a lot of talk in the community now and at our medical centers that is really important about just taking care of yourself emotionally. If you're not feeling emotionally strong, it just makes everything else harder. It makes it harder to do your treatments every day. It makes it harder to go to school or take care of work. Everything is just a little more challenging. And so if you're really getting support for your emotions, then it can be tremendously helpful. And anybody who's looked into therapy, if you don't have really good coverage, it can get expensive very quickly. And so CFRI has this amazing grant to help pay for counseling. And it can be for the person with CF, it can be for a sibling, it can be for a parent. And they can offer, I believe it's up to 8 sessions now for $120 a session, which is a tremendous resource that I can't recommend highly enough. I also want to mention Attain Health is a program that was started by a mom who has a child with cystic fibrosis, and they are offering this tremendous free resource for people. They offer a lot of health coaching. So health coaching can be, let's say you have some kind of goal related to your health. Maybe you want to really get into a better rhythm with your treatments, or maybe your doctor's always been harping on you to do more exercise, and you're like, yeah, now's the time, I'm going to take up running, I'm going to take up yoga. But you need a little bit of support in creating a plan and then some motivation to keep going. It's easy to have ideas of things we can do to take care of ourselves and have better self-care goals. Really easy to have these ideas, really hard to stick to a plan and make it work. And the health coaches with Attain Health, they'll actually help you come up with an individual plan and go through the steps of making this work and help you throughout the process. They also offer support groups and individual counseling. It's just a tremendous resource that's available for people. There are also discounts that are available for people on their household bills. So in California, PG&E, there's a program for anybody regardless of your income, and it can give you a discount on your energy bills. So it's based upon your energy usage. So the way that PG&E works it is they offer you a certain amount of energy at a certain cost. And once you maximize that amount of energy per month, then your next tier, you pay for more energy usage at a higher cost. Now, if you have a medical condition where your doctor can sign a form stating that you need these therapies that require electricity, like your nebulizer, compressor, your vest airway clearance, and these treatments are necessary to sustain your life, which they are, right? I mean, you need these things for your life. Also, if you need heating or cooling, then you can get a discount on your energy bill. So it's a tremendous source of assistance. Again, it's one of those programs that it's available for everybody, regardless of whether you earn $400,000 a year or $40,000 a year. PG&E also has a care program that if you do meet their income criteria, you can get a 20% discount on your energy bill. So it's definitely worth looking into. There are phone sources of support too. So Assurance Wireless is a federal program for people with certain income criteria, and you can get free cell phone and cell phone minutes through this. There's the California Lifeline, which offers you either home or cell phone support. So really tremendous source of assistance for people. There's also county-based assistance programs. So we talked a little bit about some county programs in the very first podcast series where we were looking at income. One of the county programs that I mentioned for food support was the supplemental assistance, or I call it the SNAP program. It used to be called food stamps, now it's called SNAP. They can give you a debit card every month for food you can get at the grocery store. There's also the Women, Infant, and Children's program, and they can help provide nutritional support for pregnant, postpartum, and breastfeeding women. I differentiate postpartum and breastfeeding because not everybody breastfeeds. You can get 6 months for postpartum, and I think up to a year if you're a breastfeeding woman. And then children up to age 5 can also qualify for assistance through this program, and it provides nutritional support to them. Actually, 53% of infants in the United States are part of this program. We have tons of our patients at UCSF who get their monthly Pediasure through WIC, so it's a great program to look into. There can also be sources of housing assistance. So let's say you're somebody who's on disability, or your household income, you're just really struggling to make ends meet, and someone in your household has a chronic medical condition. You may qualify for certain low-income programs or programs for people with medical conditions or disabilities within your county. Some of these are Section 8, where you can get a housing voucher for any housing complex that allows a certain number of people with Section 8, you can possibly get into that housing complex. So it can even be a really nice housing complex, and a lot of housing complexes, they're required to have a certain number of people who have Section 8 vouchers within that complex. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be, in a place that you wouldn't want to live. Some people are really worried about that. So I would definitely recommend looking into it. Now, the waiting list can often be very long. Sometimes the waiting lists are just not open. But, if you're really struggling to make ends meet, and this is something that is worth, putting your name on a list for, I would absolutely look at this, because if you can get assistance for your rent every month, if you only have to pay, let's say 30% of your income on rent, that's going to sustain you over the long term. So it never hurts to fill out an application. Okay. Shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about some tips for transplant financial assistance, because transplants can be really expensive, right? I mean, there's the medication, there's the copay is just for the medical bills, but then you might have to relocate to live near your transplant center. You're taking time off work to get your transplant if you're not already on disability. People who are going to be taking care of you are also taking time off work. So whatever resources you could maximize to help you with a transplant, it's absolutely worth looking into. You definitely want to look into resources for disability. So I would, talk to your transplant social worker, or look at part 1 of this podcast series to see if anything might be applicable to you as well as to your potential caregiver. And then, check to see if there are resources for travel and lodging. Maybe there's something at your transplant center, or maybe there's something with your insurance company, or maybe one of the programs like the Cystic Dreams Fund could help to pay for transplant or lodging for you. That's usually one of the biggest expenses. I know I used to work with people getting bone marrow transplants in San Francisco, and let me tell you, $3,000 a month for a temporary furnished place to stay is not something that anybody could typically afford. So we were always looking for resources for financial assistance. So that was a big expense. You can also consider fundraising. So let's talk about fundraising. When I talk to people about fundraising, I just see this glazed look come over their face, and I know this is the last thing that they want to do. And I get it, right? A lot of people, they don't want to ask their family and friends for money. Like, they just don't want to. Again, I totally get it. I just want to point out a couple of things to just think about regarding fundraising. So the first is that there are often people who really want to help you, and people are part of a lot of different communities that they might not even realize they're a part of. Maybe the community of your children's school, or your work community, or maybe there's a church community you're part of, or a cultural community. And if you can kind of get these communities together, people are astounded by the amounts that they're actually able to earn. You know, every time I would work with a family who would actually have a fundraiser, they would be amazed. They would earn tens of thousands of dollars, and this money would sustain them over the course of a year. They're paying their rent, their bills, their expenses. It's extraordinary. And it can often be a really special experience to get together and have a fundraiser. You know, I'll give you an example. Back when I worked in oncology, I was working with a patient who was Guatemalan, and he got the Bay Area Guatemalan community together. He earned, I think it was maybe $15,000 that paid for housing expenses for a year. Not only that, they held a bone marrow drive, and like 8 people were called from the people who came to the fundraiser to be a bone marrow donor for somebody, you know, people worldwide. So it was a really amazing experience for everybody to come together for this fundraiser. So you may think, you know, I don't want to ask us of my family and friends, but they may really get a lot out of helping you. And I also tell people to think about, you know, if somebody else were there having a fundraiser, you know, would you be one of the first people who were there to help them? So it's just something to think about. So if you are thinking, maybe I will have a fundraiser, but you don't know where to start, there are a lot of nonprofit organizations who will help you from the concept through the execution. They'll help you from every step along the way in putting this together. Some of the nonprofit foundations will also, it can be tax deductible for your donors. So if they donate to the nonprofit, it's a tax write-off for them, and they'll help give them a receipt, so it's kind of a nice thing for your donors. Some of them, you want to read the fine print about this, but sometimes if the nonprofit foundation is actually holding the money, it can be exempt from your countable income for programs like Medicaid or SSI. So you want to, you know, check the particular program, read the fine print. You can consult with the CF Legal Hotline if you want to make sure everything is above board. But if that kind of scenario works out for you, and you have one of these fundraisers and they can pay for your rent for a whole year, and you can keep your Medicaid and SSI, it can be a really big benefit to you. So a couple of drawbacks to working with a fundraising organization, you know, just some things to kind of think about. You know, read the fine print carefully to find out what expenses can be covered. And then I hate to say this, but you want to find out what would happen if the person with CF passes away in the worst case scenario. Some of the nonprofits will keep the money, so you want to make sure that if there is a concern about that happening, that the nonprofit you're working with isn't going to keep the money. And then look at the fees that are associated with working with the individual nonprofit, because they all have different fees associated with them. So these are fundraising organizations that you can work with: Help Hope Live, National Foundation for Transplants, Children's Organ Transplant Association, and GoFundMe. GoFundMe is really popular these days. Okay, shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about activities. So I think activities are amazing. You know, your healthcare team, they're always talking about the importance of exercise for your lungs, right? But I think that activities, they give you so much more than just exercise. You know, I worked with someone who, you know, is a child who isn't really doing a lot outside of school, you know, doesn't really have a lot of good friend connections. Activities are ways of maybe meeting a new circle of peers to hang out with. You know, maybe you're on disability and you want to pay for activity support, and you end up taking this amazing yoga class, and you meet a lot of new people through the class. I mean, there are a lot of benefits, you know, social benefits, emotional benefits that come from doing some kind of a recreational activity in addition to just the physical exercise. So the Cystic Fibrosis Lifestyle Foundation is one of my favorites, and they pay for $500 for any kind of sports-related activity under the sun. Could be yoga, swimming, dance, horseback riding, snowboarding. It's a tremendous program. I love them. I help so many families with applications to them. It's great. The Rock CF Foundation is so cool. They offer free running shoes if you want to start learning how to run. They'll sponsor you in running in a race. They'll help you with a mentor to help coach you with running. Many YMCA locations will offer discounts to people who have low incomes. I want to talk about camps. So There used to be a lot of camps for people with CF. We don't have camps for people with CF anymore, per se, but there are some camps for kids with chronic illnesses where there may be 1 or 2 campers who can come to a particular camp session, and a lot of these camps are free. And they're amazing. These are just a couple of camps that I know about from California, but there might be others in your particular area. So the Painted Turtle is one, the Dream Street Foundation, they have not just a camp for kids 4 to 14, but they have one for young adults 18 to 24. Some people think, you know, why do I want to go to a camp that's for people with illnesses? And I just kind of want to say a few words about that. So I have known a lot of kids who maybe they're in the hospital a lot, or maybe they just kind of struggle with thinking about their identity and what it means to have CF. Sometimes these camps are actually really empowering because even though it's a camp for kids with chronic illnesses, I mean, you're going and you're feeling like a normal kid. You're swimming and you're running and you're horseback riding and you're doing all these really fun things. And sometimes it can be incredibly empowering because you can be doing activities that you may never in a million years think that you would actually be able to do. I have another example. I'm sorry, I keep talking about a lot of these examples from oncology, but some of them have really stuck with me. I was working with this 21-year-old who had a brain tumor and she lost her vision. She went to a camp for young adults. She was actually rock climbing, blind, and it was the most empowering thing that you could imagine. It changed her entire view of how she looks at herself, how she thought of herself, and it literally changed her life. So maybe you're a family who couldn't ordinarily afford to send your child to camp. It's a tremendous resource that's available for people. So in addition to the ones that I mentioned, the Malleola Foundation has these amazing surf experience days for kids with CF. They're kind of outdoors and there are other kids with CF there, but kind of the idea is being exposed to salt water. Some people say that it helps their lungs and surfing can be helpful for them. And it's a really fun way to get outdoors and do an activity. And they make sure they keep the kids apart. There are also some programs I want to mention through CFRI. You know, they have their adults retreat and their moms retreat, and some years there are scholarships available. I don't want to speak for CFRI, but sometimes these benefits are available, and these are amazing programs that you can go to that are, I can't say enough about how life-changing they can be to have an experience like this. One other thing I want to mention about camps that don't have anything to do with CF, you may be surprised that they could offer scholarships. So right now for kids in California, let me tell you, the Warriors basketball camp is all the rage. And they may not want me to tell you this, but they're amazing. They have a program for low-income families, and you can apply for a scholarship to go to the Warriors basketball camp, and everyone wants to do that. So wish-granting organizations, a little snapshot about them from my experience in working with them. Sometimes these foundations, they're just amazing, and they can really grant wishes for things that your family might otherwise just not be able to afford. So I know kids who've done Make-A-Wish and they've gone on trips to Paris or Thailand or safaris in South Africa, and their families could have never afforded to do this. A lot of people feel like, oh, I don't know if Make-A-Wish is for me, you know, I'm just not that sick. I feel like I'm taking money away or a slot away from someone who really needs it. And you know, what I will say is that they're available to any, at least Make-A-Wish is available to any child under the age of 18 who just has CF, no matter how well or sick you are from your CF. You know, they recognize that just having a chronic illness and everything that goes along with it, whether it's going to the hospital, you know, doing your treatments, it's just a lot for people, and they want to support you in that. So, and actually 80% of people who do Make-A-Wish go on to live a normal life. So I wouldn't let any worries about not feeling like it's for you hold you back from applying, because they're a tremendous resource. So there are other programs in addition to Make-A-Wish. You want to do Make-A-Wish first, because sometimes if you do some of these other organizations, they'll say, oh, well, you already got a wish from them, or you already did this with them, and you might not qualify, so just something to think about. But Do It for the Love is an amazing program. They bring people to concerts, and so you can get concert tickets from them. Peach's Neat Feet is so cool. These artists hand paint sneakers for kids with chronic medical conditions, which is just beautiful. The Dream Foundation offers wish granting for people with a terminal condition with a year or less to live. So I hope that's not the situation for any of you listening, but if it is, I have worked with them a lot and they are amazing. So our last case example. So Julia, it's kind of a lot of words there on the page. I'm just going to give you some highlights. So Julia is a 16-year-old. She's been in the hospital a lot of times for her CF, for pancreatitis flares. And her mom has taken a lot of time off from work to help support her. And they've looked into the income support programs that we talked about in the first podcast, but they're still having a really hard time making ends meet for their rent every month. Julia, they're also really worried about hospital bills. They've got a lot of hospital bills from these hospitalizations. They don't qualify for Medicaid, so they're really worried about how they're going to make ends meet. Julia loves to snowboard. Family can't afford to do that. Julia is also going to go to college in a couple of years and is wondering, how am I going to pay for college? So does anybody have any ideas for Julia and what might be available for her? If she's so sick that she qualifies for disability, or we can make a case for her medical condition impacting her ability to work in the future, we could maybe look at the Department of Rehab helping to pay for her. So good one. She's also really down from being in the hospital so many times for pancreatitis, and so she takes advantage of the CFRI counseling grants and gets some counseling support for her. The family applies for the United Children's Healthcare Foundation to pay for their hospital bills, and they apply to Claire's Place to pay for their rent while they're in the hospital. So all in all, a lot of really wonderful resources. They apply for a discount for PG&E for their energy bills. So there's a lot that you can tap into. So kind of at the end of the day, to summarize, I would not hesitate to talk to your clinic social worker or the CF Compass program to see if there might be some of these programs that are available for you. Again, I did not cover everything, and a lot of these programs are really nuanced, so it's good to talk to your clinic to see how they can help you and see what's available in your area. So that concludes our podcast series, and I can't thank you enough, CFRI, for inviting me to speak, and thank you for everybody who's listened so patiently. And I really hope that no matter what your financial situation is, that some of these programs will be available to help you. And thank you for listening.